A fully restored 1914 Curtiss flying boat was cleared by the FAA for test flights after it was rebuilt by Pangbourne Airport-based Century Aviation. A small group of invited guests watched on as the vintage biplane was eased into the water and taxied out onto the lake. Company owners Mark Smith and Karen Barrow were commissioned to do the restoration by Bill Nutt. He's a Florida businessman for the nonprofit Collings Foundation.
Really excited and just a little terrified.
Yeah, a bit nervous.
Yeah. But we've had a good talks with our pilot. He's got a lot of experience with it. He's comfortable. Our engine mechanics, things like that, they're comfortable. The guys have gone over and over it. I think we're good.
We're ready to go.
You've built a lot of aircraft up there.
Yes, we have.
How does this project rate?
This is probably our favorite. It's been, I don't like the term bucket list, but this has been on our bucket list, this particular aircraft, for 25 years or more. We've known about the project for 30.
Yeah.
And finally through Bill Nutt, who's basically paying for the project, we were able to make it possible.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Smith and Barrow started work on that project in 2016. Nutt discussed the story behind the project with NCW Life News.
Well, I had actually done a previous project with Century Aviation. I did a 1909 Curtiss Pusher, which is not a float plane, wheeled plane, tricycle gear, same OX5 engine, and I did that 4 years previously. And when it was completed, donated it to the Collings Foundation in Stowe, Massachusetts. The Collings Foundation has a great collection of not only aircraft, but automobiles and tanks. And in their aircraft museum, they have specialty is naval aircraft. And so the first Navy airplane was a 1909 Curtiss Pusher. The second was a Model F flying boat.
Interesting.
And so I was interested in what the second aircraft was, and happily Mark Smith knew where we could find some parts for a Model F. And so I brought Mark and Rob Collings from the Collings Foundation, and I went and looked in a barn in East Haven, Connecticut, where this plane had crashed in 1915, had been dragged out shortly thereafter, parts put in a barn, and a gentleman whose last name is Vernon had bought the farm and went into the old barn and thought he had found a windmill. But in the center of the parts was the control structure, and on it was the original registration plate. And it said Curtiss Aeroplane Company, Model F number 112. So he really knew what he had. And he put that on the internet, and Mark saw it, and that's how we found out where this was. And so Mark said he had wanted for 30 years to build a Model F, and I said, well, I'd like to build a Model F, so we got together. So that's how it started, 4 years ago.
And your impression of the final product?
Oh, it's beautiful. It's absolutely remarkable. And the product that you see behind you is only part of it. There were no existing complete plans for a Model F. Some of them were in the Curtiss Wright Museum in Columbus. Some of them were in the Smithsonian. Some of them were at the Curtiss Museum in Hammondsport, New York, but nobody had a complete set of plans. Well, one of the things that comes out of all of this is that we now have one complete set of plans, as well as a flying, existing resurrection of a flying boat.
Now, the aircraft reportedly maneuvered well in the water, but the first two attempts to lift off were scuttled due to some mechanical issues. But the third time was the charm, thanks to Century Aviation's team of highly skilled engineers who made the necessary repairs. The plane took off and then flew about 50 feet over the water at a distance of about a quarter mile. It landed, then took off 2 more times before it was removed from the water. Bill Nutt said the plane will now be transported to New York, where it'll be reassembled for a second test flight.
And that is the big Curtiss Museum flight the second Saturday of September every year. They have a fly-in for all of the existing Curtiss aircraft. And Curtiss built airplanes through the Second World War. He built some very big transport airplanes. He was a genius at aeronautics. And so all of those airplanes come back in September, and this will be the sort of the highlight of that show.
For Century Aviation, it's on to the next project, a Curtiss Jenny biplane, similar to the aircraft they built for the Evergreen Aviation Museum in McMinnville, Oregon. Steve Hare, NCW Life News.